Even when I wanted to look away, I knew I couldn't. There are different kinds of wounds. Not just the ones you can see.
I have so much to say, but first of all, you're fantastic in this role.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I really want to start with a thank you for your work. I've really enjoyed your stuff over the years, and I've learned so much about acting and what it really takes. Just want to say thanks for your work also.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
So before jumping into the film real quick, I'm always curious with actors, what is the most nervous you've been prior to the first day of filming something?
I mean, the most nervous I have been, I think, was probably prior to the first day of filming Lee, because so much rested on it for me, because I had spent 7 years developing it up to that point, really working with the writers, getting the script right, contributing even at points to the financing, putting the financing together, which was a very complicated process, hiring the crew, bringing in all those wonderful actors, and so wanting it to be not only a great experience for everybody, I, of course, wanted to make the best possible film that we could. And I actually vividly remember I did not sleep a wink the night before.
I read, could be wrong, so you've spent all this time developing this movie. You're finally shooting with cameras. You're on the first day of filming, and boom, you get hurt.
I hurt myself the day before we started shooting.
Oh, my bad.
It was when we were rehearsing the San Malo sequence, the Battle of San Malo, and I'm running through that street as it's being bombed. And the costume designer came to me before rehearsal and he said, just quickly, can you slip these boots on? I just want to make sure that, you know, that they're comfy and we don't need to break them down anymore. I said, oh yeah, sure. And the sole of the shoe had not been scored enough or scuffed up enough, so there was no grip. So I went running through that town. I ran into the entryway of our bombed out hotel set, which was covered in sand, and I just went like an ice rink, bang, and I landed right on my coccyx on a hard marble floor. And it was, I mean, I really thought I had broken my back. Somehow I hadn't. But I had 2 vertebrae that had come out, 2 that had gone in, and 4 hematomas on my spine. I didn't even know that that was a thing that could happen. And I was in excruciating agony. But ironically, Lee Miller went through the war with unbearable back pain. So I was like, okay, great, thanks. That's another thing. And so, yes, I was in a lot of pain, but, you know, I just kept going. You just keep going. What are you going to do? Stop? It's an independent movie. Like, no. So we just kept going.
Yeah, I can't imagine, but it is weird that she had back pain, and then she's like, yeah, you're going to get it too.
Oh, yeah. There were lots of things that Lee threw at me, but that's okay. That's okay. She was just testing me all the time.
How was this Ellen's first movie?
Isn't it extraordinary?
Seriously.
I mean, when I was developing the film, I knew that there was no way I could talk to a male director about directing this piece. That just, it sort of morally that wouldn't have felt like the right thing to do. And because it was so important to me to really capture what Lee did in being that visual voice for the victims of conflict with that Rolleiflex camera, and that I had to learn how to use that thing like it was an extension of my arms. It just had to be second nature. But Ellen, with her visual storytelling skills, I knew that how she was going to be able to visually convey the narrative and the film that I was hoping to make, I knew she could do it.
So I want to say, this is like a fantastic movie, but there's a lot of, I'm just sort of curious, how did you decide movie versus like a 6 or 8 episode TV miniseries, because her story is so incredible and there's so much you can pull out of her story that's great dramatic material.
So, I mean, that was part of the challenge. Most of the challenge in really getting the screenplay right was, okay, how much do we keep in? Because she lived so many lives in her lifetime. I mean, truly, like in her later years, post-war, she became a cordon bleu chef, honestly, and she was just extraordinary. But for me, this decade of Lee's life was the decade when Lee became Lee. This was the period of her life that most defined her, and also was the period in her life that I believe is how she would most wish to be remembered. we wanted to lift her out of the male gaze. She had been often described as the former muse of Mare, the ex-cover girl, former Vogue model, these infantilizing labels that had been placed upon her. And that was a tiny section of her life. Her real life and her truth that she fought for really happened during that decade of her life when she went to war and paid a huge emotional price herself for bearing witness. And as soon as we settled on that decade, we were able to really condense and pack our story.
What was, I don't know who it was it Ellen who said, let's get the guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine to play David?
It was actually Marion Hume, who is one of our co-writers, who's a very old friend of mine. I've actually known her since I was 16 years old. And this was also her first screenplay. We had lots of first-timers, actually, and that was very important to me as well. But Marion called me one day and she went, have you actually seen how much Andy Samberg looks like the real Davy Sherman? And I said, hang on, no, let me just think about this. And I had never put the two faces together. And of course, the second I did, oh my God, all the light bulbs went on. And I just thought, wow. And she said, go on, ask him. I said, well, first of all, I don't know him. And secondly, I don't know if he would feel this was something he wanted to do. And to my amazement and delight, he took a phone call and he was really excited to be asked. And he read, he sort of became part of a process of trying to figure out how he would feel comfortable in doing this, and he was just absolutely brilliant. And I'm a big believer in comedic actors 100% being able to play serious roles, and we were very, very fortunate to have him, and he was very happy to have been asked.
First of all, I'm a huge fan of his, and I mean, you should of course cast people that were in Pop Star. I'm joking around, obviously, but being completely serious. In the third act, you deal with a very serious subject matter with the train sequence, with the concentration camps. There's so much there that is very powerful. Can you sort of talk about the importance of those scenes and what it was like actually on set trying to capture those historical moments?
Well, when we were shooting those scenes, we actually had a really scary moment where it suddenly started to properly rain, which we knew that it had not been raining when Lee had taken some of those images. So the waiting for the rain to stop part became ever so slightly nerve-wracking because we obviously had so much we needed to shoot during our day. Anyway, the gods were on our side, if you believe in God, and the rain lifted. And all I can tell you is that it was incredibly hard. Incredibly hard and detailed, because there have been so many wonderful films that have been made by brilliant filmmakers that include scenes from the Holocaust or even about the Holocaust entirely, beginning to end, that are wonderful, wonderful films. And we knew that we didn't want to do that because we had Lee's images and we had to only be guided by them. But when you look at Lee's real images and what she did, it really sets her apart from other male photographers at the time, men who were standing back and photographing what they could see, or photographing the soldiers and the fighting or the bloodshed. Lee was photographing the women, the children, the victims of the atrocities of the Nazi regime, but not just photographing it, but because she had a Rolleiflex camera that she did not need to bring up to her face, she was able to truly bear witness, truly stand in amongst the destruction, the devastation, and the death, and to reveal to the world the stories of those victims, the people left behind, the people, the missing, whose stories may otherwise not have been told. And that did feel like a pressure, but it didn't make us panic. We just stuck to the truth and let the facts carry us through those sequences. It was very hard, yeah.
Again, I just want to say congrats on your work in the film, and thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you very much.